James Leon was looking over his billion-dollar deals from one of the highest floors in New York. Yet, the magnificent view outside couldn't fill the emptiness inside him. Everything changed when a message suddenly appeared in front of his office window. Come to Tennessee. Short, clear, like a challenge. James decided right then and there to face his past, no matter what. In that moment, he was about to make the biggest decision of his life. If you want to see more exciting stories like this, don't forget to like and subscribe. Thank you for your support, and I'll see you in the next video. The neon lights of New York City were flickering, like thousands of stars in a sky that never darkened. James Leon, a businessman who had built his empire with his billion-dollar fortune, leaned back in his penthouse office, gazing at the city view. The deal he had just secured surpassed $1 billion, another victory, another success added to his empire. Yet, still, there was a feeling of emptiness he couldn't explain. His assistant, Lauren, entered his office with a confident smile, holding a stack of papers. Mr. Leon, your flight to Tennessee is ready. Would you like me to prepare your plane? James didn't respond immediately. He remained silent for a moment, watching the reflection of the city lights in the windows. Then, he made a decision. Cancel the flight, he said, his voice carrying an unusual determination. I'll stay here for a while longer. Lauren raised her eyebrows, looking at him in surprise. But the meeting in Tennessee is very important, sir. I'll handle it from here, James replied, his mind already made up for the next step. His driver, Charles, arrived within minutes, and James got into the black luxury car, beginning to drive away from the city. As the car left the city behind, James's thoughts drifted to his past, a place he had tried to forget, Nashville, Tennessee. 10 years later, he had decided to follow the traces of the past. From a child with nothing but big dreams to a man who had become a billionaire. But here, in this old town, everything felt different. The small town that held his home, which also felt like a prison. As the car passed through familiar streets, getting closer to the places that defined his youth, James's heart tightened. The library where he read magazines about business because he couldn't afford books, the street corner where he waited to sell newspapers, these were all things of the past. And then, as they approached the end of the street, his heart suddenly began to race. Maggie's Diner. Time seemed to have had no effect on this place. The neon signs still faintly glowed. The red chairs were in their places. James's breath caught. He remembered a promise he had made to himself here once. I won't come back until I have everything. But now here he was. Charles, stop here, he said, his voice distant, as if he were speaking to someone else. I'll be back in a minute. The door chimes, and James walked into the diner, the familiar scent of coffee and grilled food filling the air. The atmosphere hadn't changed. It was comfortable, old-fashioned, and timeless. He sat at a corner booth, the same one where he had dreamed of a life he could never reach. As he looked outside, old memories came flooding back. Dreams of escaping this small town, the struggles his family faced, the desire to prove he could achieve more. His thoughts were interrupted by a soft voice. What can I get you, sir? James looked up, and time seemed to freeze. The waitress standing in front of him had her dark brown hair gathered in a messy bun, and the simple uniform she wore was no different from the one he remembered seeing for years. But there was something familiar, something deeply familiar. It was Isabel Thompson, the girl who had always been the brightest and most ambitious in school. She had always dreamed of a bigger, better life. But now, she looked different. Tired. Worn out. Her once bright green eyes were now dull. A steak and coffee, James said, the shock hidden in his voice. Isabel took the order and walked away. James couldn't take his eyes off her. He hadn't seen her in 10 years. They had been friends back then, but there had never been much between them. They used to dream together, make plans for the future. But somehow, their paths had parted. When Isabel returned with the food, James didn't wait. Isabel. Isabel froze for a moment, her eyes looking at his face with uncertainty flashing in them. How do you know my name? James leaned forward, the sense of familiarity making his heart race. Westwood High, class of 2012. Recognition appeared in Isabel's eyes, and as she placed the plate down with a slight tremble in her hand, she whispered, James. James Leon. James smiled, but it wasn't the confident smile of a billionaire. It was the smile of a boy who had never forgotten her. The one and only, he said slowly. Isabel looked at him, her expression shifting from shock to something more complex. "You're James, Leon, the billionaire James?" James shook his head, but the pride he should have felt was absent. Instead, an unexpected pain settled in his ch. "I never thought I'd see you again," Isabel said, disbelief in her voice. "You made it out? I always knew you would." James's gaze softened. "I never expected to find you here." Isabel shrugged, her smile empty. "Some of us don't deserve a second chance, do we?" They talked for hours. But as the conversation went on, Isabel's demeanor changed. She became quieter, more distant. James could sense that something was wrong. There were things she wasn't saying. Finally, he couldn't take it any longer. "Isabel, what happened to you? You were going to change the world." Isabel paused. Then, with a heavy sigh, shared the painful truth. "My dad died when I was in my second year at Harvard," Isabel said, her voice trembling. "After that, everything fell apart. My mom got sick, and I had to drop out of school to take care of her. My little brother was still in school. I had to take care of them. So, I took whatever job I could find, and here I am, working at Maggie's diner." James's chest tightened. The girl who had once been full of life and potential, who had dreamed of changing the world, was now living nothing but pain and sacrifice. Isabel, who had fought to save her life and tried to put everything together, was now just trying to survive. "And you're still here," James said, his voice softening. "Many dreams don't come true," Isabel said, smiling through the pain. The next day, James couldn't help but think about Isabel. He was a billionaire, living in a world where anything was possible. But could he make Isabel's life better? Or rather, could he truly give her a chance? James had made up his mind to find a way to change her life. But he didn't want to do it by just throwing money at her. He wanted to give her a real chance, just like he once had.